Morning there.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Dr. Ramesh
Good
Babu.
evening, sir.
Once again, I thank Reena Madam and Jimson team for giving me this chance again after 1 year to refresh whatever which has been discussed last year. So with this, we'll start with this and really appreciate Dr. Ramesh Babu's patience to ask all the questions, genuine questions, which is helpful for
Thank
the
you.
exam
Thank you very
going.
much, sir.
Exam going, and Madan had given a wonderful presentation. So with a lot of practical tips, many of them are asking from the practical point of view. I hope I'll also continue with the same kind of content.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your valuable time for this, for the people, especially for the postgraduate.
Yes,
and it's a continuation of the update research is what has been discussed. Now we are going for a reconstructive part, which you are more versatile. So for the first question, what students have been asking, why is fibula is more versatile for reconstruction mandible? This is the mandible. Why is the fibula graft?
As it is asked, it is the most versatile flap for various reasons. One is the bone stock. Second is Taylor is the first person who tried this fibula for reconstruction of toe defect and the limb defects. Later, Hidalgo made multiple osteotomies, David Hidalgo in 1989, and he proved that multiple osteotomies can be made in fibula to carve like a mandible and restore dentally. That is the main idea of this fibula. Second is the most least donor site morbidity that you can see only in fibula when you compare with the other areas like iliac crest. Iliac crest will have a good bone stock, osteotomy is difficult, pedicle length is short, caliber size is small, donor site morbidity is too high. Easy flap, but still it is having these issues. Mandible is like it is more or less anatomically and morphologically coinciding with the fibula flap. Fibula is nothing but mandible in the leg, they call. So as good as that, we can make a twin barrel to incorporate the dental implants, and we can place a lot of other conservative methods to do a dental rehabilitation. At the end of the day, the patient needs to have some kind of basic function that is easily achievable by doing a fibula. That is why fibula is preferred flap for reconstruction of 90% of the flap is addressed by osteocutaneous free fibula flap.
Because we have a good skin as well as a soft features and the osseous component also in that.
Yes.
Now, what will be the disadvantage of the fibula graft? So like a complication of the fibula, morbidity of the site.
Apart from the regular infection, seroma, swelling, all these things, one of the dreadful complications that we had a few months back is like compartment syndrome.
Yeah.
The compartment syndrome is one of the rarest complications should happen for these kind of elective surgery. If it is happening with the orthopedic reason, then that is fine. When the patient is coming with a healthy leg and undergoing the fibular transformation, transport from the remote area to that maxillofacial area, the tourniquet time to be managed properly. The tourniquet time, what empirically done is 300 millimeter of mercury for all patients, which is not there. Double the value of your patient's BP, systolic pressure. If it is 120/80, it should be 240. That's it. So what happens if you keep the tourniquet for prolonged time, and you are not, the maximum time that you can have in the leg is the 2 hours, not more than that. If you are not able to achieve the harvest within 2 hours, then it has to be deflated, wait for 45 minutes to one hour, then again you have to reflate. That is the ideal way of doing. And some kind of the complication which can also occur with the tourniquet. The earlier I was talking about the time of tourniquet. The second is position of the tourniquet. The tourniquet should be as close to the inguinal area, as close to the inguinal area. Hope all will understand what is tourniquet. So pneumatic inflatable tourniquet, which can be placed in the thigh so that the distal part of the limb will not get blood, so that you can have a blood-free harvesting field, surgical field. For that, we place the tourniquet. So if you put much low level close to the popliteal region, even though the pressure is very less, and even though if you finish on time, that can precipitate compartment syndrome. What is compartment syndrome is nothing but as we all know, the leg has got lateral, anterior, and posterior compartments. All the compartments will have vital structures like blood vessels and nerves. So what happens? All the inflammatory exudate blood will get collected in that compartments. So when it getting collected like that, it causes compression over those vital structures, and it can cause transient ischemia to the foot. You have to identify that the symptoms. Like initially, you'll have a patient of excruciating pain. Typical neuralgic pain will patient be noticing that. You can't even touch the patient's thigh. That's the first classical. Second is your fever. Third is your creatinine urea level will spike like anything. There will be a drastic spike in your serum urea. That will go to the level where the kidney needs dialysis. Those kind of complications are all noticed in the laboratory value. So how to address this? Identify the
When do we
complication.
notice, sir? After how many days of post-operative we'll notice this compartment?
Immediately, that is acute symptom, which will happen within the 24 hours to 48 hours. If it is exceeding 48 hours, the patient will have blisters in their leg. This is not a very unmanaged. It can be managed. That's what the idea for this thing is. I'm sharing this episode is like you can manage in a very easiest way. If you check the values, blood parameters, you will see some kind of variation, especially serum urea creatinine level. Bund level will be spiked because of the lactic acidosis. Second is the patient have a severe tenderness in the thigh. We operate in the lower limb, right? The patient will have a pain in the thigh where we place the tourniquet. The third, you can see some kind of ecchymosis all over the thigh where you place the tourniquet. That's the classical sign. And what's the treatment for that? You just open the wound, that's it. Once you open the wound, leave it for 3-4 days. If possible, give some negative pressure suction for 3 or 4 days. If it is required, you go for a skin graft, or else you can do primarily as it is. That is the rarest complications once in 1,000. That too because of the exceeded pressure that has been exerted on the thigh. That could be
one of the dreaded complication of that morbidity associated with that.
Yeah, dreadful, because patient is coming with a healthy leg for getting addressed for a small defect, and we are planning for a fibula, and if he goes with ischemic leg or loss of toe, if it is an orthopedic already existing trauma, then that won't be questioned. So that is one of the rarest complication. Apart from that, patient will have a dehiscence, rejection of the skin graft. Skin graft will get lost because of the placement of the skin graft over the tendon, peroneus longus tendon. That should be avoided. Make sure it is healthy bed is present underneath the skin graft. Go for SSG always, rather than going for full thickness flap, full thickness skin graft. Go for SSG. And if you are reconstructing the intraoral closure, you take a skin graft from the same site itself. Hope you are understanding what I'm saying. If you are harvesting the flap from the right leg, exactly make the skin paddle without the epidermal layer. You just take the epidermal layer before you do the harvesting. Do the harvesting, put back the same skin. We want only the subcutaneous tissue and the bone and the blood vessels. That is already been taken from the leg. That can be placed in the face, and you can put back the skin, what you have obtained from the leg itself can be placed, so that one more site need not be explored. Or you can go for a collagen sheets or whatever.
Morbidity can be avoided in other sites.
Yes. That is if you are going for addressing the benign lesions where you have multiple options. If at all the patient wants fibula is the only option for that case. In that case, try to make it as conservative as possible.
Thank you. Shall we go for the next slide, madam? So what is the magnification you recommend?
Magnification, I would suggest to go for a microscope first of all, rather than going for loops. If at all, if you're going for a 2 mm of vessel, at least you need a 12.5x magnification for the blood vessels, which is not available in your loops. Loops maximum you can go for a 4.5, not more than that. There are loops which is having 7.5x, but the focal length will not be the same. Should have adequate focal length.
For
focal
vessel preparation or for anastomosis?
For anastomosis. Yeah.
Okay.
See, when you're taking the loops, the magnification, the focal length should be adequate between the focal length is from the object to the eye. That is the focal length. You cannot go near to the patient. When the magnification increases, the focal length will get decreased. So you have to keep like this and do it, which will not be there in the microscope. 12.5x magnification. The idea of doing all this magnification is just to see the needle and the suture bit. That's it. vessel you're anyway going to see it. So what happens? The magnification will vary when you are not constantly positioned. When you are not constantly sitting and doing with the loops, the focal length will change. So to overcome all these kind of issues, you better use your microscopes. All Indian microscopes nowadays available as cheap as your imported loops. Imported loops are costing 75,000 to 1 lakh. For the same cost, you can buy a ophthalmic microscope, very compatible, which will have a good magnification, and you can do a comfortable anastomosis. For loops, for anastomosis, 4.5 is enough. Make sure this 4.5 is not as good as the microscope that you're using for 12.5. But why we are, suppose if you're not able to, suppose you're commuting with some other centers with the loops, it will be easy. Microscope is not that practical.
Yeah.
So in that, in that case, you have to select these kind of micro loops. And the positioning of the head is again a challenge for any kind of loop that you're using. And some centers, when they are using the perforator flaps, ALT perforator flap is there, or rectus abdominis perforator, they wear 2.5x dental loops for harvesting the flap, not for anastomosis, just to get magnified so that they will be away from the surgical site. They will have a straight back and do that, like how you do minor surgeries with your loops. That for that harvesting the flap, 2.5 is enough. For anastomosis, at least 4.5 should be there.
Sir, thank you. And what are the treatment modalities we have in the maxillary reconstruction and manipulation? How does it differs and why it differs? Can you give an idea the difference between the maxillary reconstruction, mandibular reconstruction, the options, the data differs?
Flap wise all remains the same only. The sculpting of the flap is one. The second is the ladder that you have displayed is all little new thing have come. New ladder, revised reconstruction ladder. They start the free tissue. Then free tissue is nothing but obtaining the tissues from the. It's based on the congruity. You're taking the graft or flap from the remote site, remote anatomical site. You obtain the flap along the blood vessels. That is the free flap, or called distant flap. Pedicle flap is, for example, pectoralis major or delta. One, the pedicle is intact. The pedicle is nothing but the blood vessels supplying the flap is intact at one point, and it's rotated to that is called pedicle flaps. Local flap is very close, such as a neighborhood flap, mucosal flaps or whatever. Regional flaps goes to the submental flap or your what is the nasolabial, those kind of within the region, within the maxillary, superficial temporal artery flap. Superficial temporal artery flap is very good pedicle flap, which is very useful for your reconstruction of the floor of the orbit as well as for your maxilla. It has got limitation. That's it. Nasolabial, as you all know, that we use it for the what is submucous fibrosis or the oronasal communication, those kind of things that will be useful for this. So when you come down, you think about the submental flap, close proximity. These are the few. Free tissue, why we prefer free tissue? It is technically sensitive. Why they have revised this ladder? This is the original ladder which has been designed few decades ago. The latest one is you have to start with the free flap. You're not able to achieve the primary intention or secondary healing, then you think about flap. When the gap increases, you think about the flap. Otherwise, you won't think about flap, isn't it? So what you have to do is you have to choose the free flap first. Free flap has got a technical sensitive part is called anastomosis, cooptation or connecting the blood vessels. That has to be done within 2 hours, maximum 2 hours. The flap can be without blood for 2 hours, not more than that. That's in about rule 1. Second rule is 1 gram of tissue should get 8 ml of blood per hour. That is, for 1 gram of tissue, 8 ml of blood should go inside and come out within 1 hour. So that should be there. And it varies, the value varies. When you're taking a huge span flap, large span flap like rectus abdominis or ALT flap, definitely that needs more amount of blood to get circulated within the microcirculation to be encouraged. When there is no blood, there won't be pressure also. So you have to finish the process very fast. Maximum 2 hours, you have to finish it. So free tissue flap, if you pull out one brick, the whole wall will get collapsed, isn't it? Like that, every step is very important when you take a free flap into account. So that's what, if that goes for flaw, then you go for the other layers. You can go for pedicle flaps if that goes. See why these ladders have been given. They anticipate some kind of complication will be there while doing the reconstruction. That you should have it in your mind. Unlike your conventional way of surgeries, this will have a different ball game, right? You have to start with so much options. See, for example, if you are having one kind of tumor, if resection is done, or you have to think about all these options in your hand, in your mind, before you start talking to the patients, how extensively it is going. Another challenge is when you handle being a oncology seminar, I would like to, we are depending upon the frozen section. Ramesh sir was asking about this frozen section. Frozen section may not be as per our plan pre-operatively. It keeps on invading. So when the extent of the defect keeps on increasing, you have to think about something else. We may be having a small size of defect for going for a pectoralis major or small flaps or a delta pectoral, whatever it is. When it goes extensively, we have to think about something else. Long span flap should be managed. That's what so much of options have been given. One goes for flow, another. Second is the radiation. All the patients, as Madan said, all the patient has to be sent for radiation within the 3rd week or 4th week. So before that, the flap has to get healed. For that, we need to plan accordingly. The bed of the flap is very important. Apart from the flap that is harvested from the healthy side, the flap where is going to housed in the recipient bed, isn't it? That place has to be healthy. That is as bad as your uncontrolled diabetes. Like the dysplastic cells are very aggressive, and the healing won't be that good unless it has got adequate blood supply. So that is the second factor. Third, the radiation part. Third week, 4th week, when you're going for radiation, you have to take into consideration, especially when you take for example, sir asked about fibula flap. For fibula flap, you take a composite component. What is composite? That is bone, skin, muscle, everything is involved. The chunk is taken from the leg. That has to be placed to give the fullness, and whatever the purpose you are doing that reconstruction, that is done. You're sending the patient for radiation. Madan was insisting if the T3 or T4 lesion that exceeds the radiation dosage. 50 gray is the maximum dosage even the mandible can withstand. That is what, see, if it is exceeding 50, that causes a lot of spinal issues later. So when the lesion size is increasing, even for a normal tissue, when you're taking from the flap from the leg and placed in the face, if you think it is going to be 60 gray or 55 gray, then you have to think of the other flap, soft tissue flap alone. Don't take voluminous flap. When the volume increases, you should be able to give adequate blood supply to be restored. So in that, those modifications should be planned pre-op. However, you plan pre-operatively, you have to have an option B and C, not from the technical point of view, from the side point of view, from the way of addressing the issue. So that is what these reconstruction, the revised reconstruction ladder. Revised reconstruction is starting from the free flap, then go to the next one. And they have mentioned about the tissue expansion. Tissue expansion will have some kind of challenges when you address with your CA patients. The amount 3 weeks or 4 weeks, if you keep on expanding the tissue, until then the patient cannot wait to undergo the surgery. That is, that is the one. Second is the transport distraction. It's one of the wonderful procedures, which is good, but still the problem is the straight defect, small defect. It's fine. And then once again, the bed makes a major role in that, isn't it? If the mandible is already compromised with your blood supply and the healing is already jeopardized, then if you put such a huge, like hardware to get advanced, that is the one. What is the flaws that?
As you speak about the transport distractors, I think for the malignant lesions, rather than a transport distractor, benign lesions is more comfortable. What we understand so far. Yes. And also we are going in a ladder has been reversed. We are going for a first, we are choosing a distant flap. I mean, we are going for a flap, then going for a local flap or anything. What are the common morbidity also the harvesting site as well as the flap, what you are harvesting and survival of the flap? There are a lot of other complications. What do you encounter? What do you see that PT should know how to manage about it?
I would like to put a clear footprint on this. This is like it's called as Bermuda's Triangle. No, as you are thinking about that. That is the way of the flaps. You have to have a different principles for addressing the patient who are requiring flap surgery, the free flaps or whatever the flaps. Any prolonged surgery will have a very bad recovery. That is to be taken for granted. That should be taken for granted. So it is prolonged. The stress induced by the surgery will have some kind of impact on the patient mindset as well as on the healing pattern, unlike the normal tissues. So better try to finish as simple as possible. Even whatever the flap it is, it has to be addressed as early as possible. Teamwork must be encouraged. Simultaneous teamwork must be encouraged. The teamwork can only be encouraged when you take a free flaps to some extent. Imagine Dr. Madan is doing a neck dissection. He wants to place a pec major. Until he finish the primary resection, he cannot address the pec major of the ipsilateral side. He has to do that the same procedure. So the operating time is increased. Second comes your free flap. Free flap has your challenge of only this anastomosis part and ischemic time of the flap. Earlier the restoration of the blood circulation, better the outcome. Once again, even if the flap is planned, even the simultaneous approach is happening, the frozen section says you need some more tissue to be harvested from the leg, then that be a challenge. So you have to take excess more than what is required, then keep that ready. Once the frozen section comes as positive or negative, based on that you transfer the flap. What is the challenge in that donor side? All the donor side will have some kind of, especially radial forearm flap. Easiest flap, that is like a child's play for all the maxillofacial surgeon, very due course. That is the one, very superficial anatomy, pliable skin, and ideal for heart, tongue, cheek, whatever it is. You can make a double barrel and fold it with for mucosa on the your skin. But still, that is the most what is it? The donor side morbidity is very high with that contracture. Patient not be able to will have a carpal tunnel later period of time, and these are the drawbacks. So any surgical site will have some kind of complication that has to be identified earlier and addressed. As I said, compartment syndrome is also commonly seen in radial forearm flap. That is more commonly involved. So all these factors to be taken into account. So operating time and donor vascular anomalies. Preoperative is very, very important for a maxillofacial surgeon. No one can skip from that. No one can escape from that kind of complication. Some kind of vascular anomalies happening in the leg or the limb, whatever it is, that can't be substantiated, that you can't justify at all. So what you have to do all the tests like CT angiography for leg. The idea of taking CT angiography is not only to see the vascular pattern, but also the level of peroneal artery division. The division will take place very low level. You better abort the process of taking, that is, you have to assess preoperatively. You have to assess preoperatively. So CT angiography is very helpful aid apart from the Doppler. Doppler is enough for your soft tissue flaps like your ALT or your radial forearm flap. So these are 3-4 flaps that every oral surgeon, maxillofacial surgeon need to know about this. So anything else to be discussed on this, sir?
What are the complications you would see about the flaps and when you do the reconstructing part, and especially
regarding the recipiency, first 36 hours is crucial period, sir. Whatever happens, first 8 hours you have to keep on watching the flap. Every half an hour you have to keep on pricking this. Fast filling, dark color blood, classical indication of venous congestion. You prick the flap, immediately blood will gushes, dark blue color blood gushes from that. Forget about all the temperature. Temperature will be uniform with your oral cavity. So you don't rely on that. You just prick it and see if you're taking soft tissue flap. If it is gushing blood, dark color blood, classical sign of venous congestion, you have to take the patient. Before that, don't leave the theater without having a satisfied anastomosis. That is the one thing. Before you do a closure, after doing the closure, and don't put multiple sutures to engage the flap into it. Just partial insetting of the flap is enough. So what happened? It has been transferred from different place, and you cannot fold in multiple places for the sake of doing a suturing. So you have to minimize the number of sutures. If you want, you can do it on the third day under local anesthesia or in the OP setup or whatever it is. So pin prick, it should take at least 5 seconds to get filled up. Bright red color is a classical sign of ideal flap. And second day or third day, if the flap is not viable, it undergoes desquamation. The epidermal layer will go for a desquamation. These are the classical sign of failing flaps. So 36 hours is the golden hour. 12th hour, if you are able to achieve the reanastomosis, that is for done. That is, your flap is taken up nicely. 36th hour, it is 70% of success, 30% of 72 hours is 50-50. Again, you have to explore the new vessel from the flap. Don't use the same vessel that you have already operated. Feeder will be active. Hope you am clear. The feeder vessel is active always. You've done anastomosis with the recipient. The recipient will have two wings always. Most of the lower limb, abdomen, whatever, it will have a dual vena committance you will have. So one vena committance goes for a flood. Don't try to do the anastomosis the same vena committance. You ligate that and go for a fresh one, which is already left undisturbed. So that part has to be taken into account. Failing flap is not negligence, whereas if something happens to the donor seti, then that will become a problematic. So that you have to be very careful. That can be overcome by doing a proper preoperative assessment of the donor site. Healthy patients to be chosen, younger patient without any peripheral vascular disease, atherosclerotic changes. These are all the changes that you need, that will come to know in the CT angiography or Doppler. So based on that, you can take up the patient for harvesting the flap from the distant site.
And one more thing, that if you encounter a failing flap and a free flap, how do we manage salvage the flap when it's going to be failing?
Another flap is the option, sir. Another flap.
How do we
another
manage?
flap? Another
Yes,
flap is the option.
Another flap.
Another flap. Yes, yes.
Okay.
All the flaps to be, no other option. That is, you can't leave it as it is. This is for not for cosmesis. This is giving a basic seal how the patient is going to lead his rest of his life. That is the principle of this oncology surgery or reconstruction, whatever it is. It is supportive adjuvant therapy for oncology, surgical oncologist. So this is going to help in a way to give a seal. The patient has to swallow, talk to minimal extent, and if possible, try to get some amount of cosmesis and dental reablation, at least with your conventional way of
so early salvaging, can we do anything about it? Any sign of any early failure of flap? Maybe within a span of 8 hours or something like that.
That is a golden period for the surgeon, that a flap can be easily saved. 8 hours is nothing, it is like you can easily do it. That is not a problem at all. Nowadays, a lot of softwares have come. So you can operate anywhere else, and the operating surgeon will be somewhere else. He will be monitoring the flap using the Doppler. The changes, as you see in the ECG, the changes will take place. Immediately, the assistant go and address he can do that pinprick test and find out what kind of complication is happening within the flap. Immediately, the patient can be transported to the OT and do the reanastomosis. So 8 hours is the golden period. That is the luckiest patient and the surgeon. Those can give a fantastic outcome.
Thank you very much, sir, for elaborate presentation on this question. Can you go for the next question, madam?
Yeah.
I think
for free flap, except the radial forearm flap, which has got palmaris longus tendon, can be taken along with the flap. That can easily address these commissure issues, oral commissure issue. Oral commissure is the modulus. No flap, nothing can replace this modulus except the palmaris longus tendon that incorporated with your radial forearm flap, preferably with the sensate flap, with the cubital branch. You can incorporate that to some extent. The rest of the flap will not have this kind of facility. So commissure reconstruction is damn difficult. For these kind of defect, if body or philtrum, everything, no reconstructive surgeon can replace exactly which has been lost in the patient. That is the two for after doing such a ablative surgeries. So that case, you have to compromise with some other way. That is just to give a seal. You can go Karpathian flap. You can make a lateral incision, mobilize the flap, and give a closure on the existing lip. That is the easiest way. For upper lip reconstruction, nasolabial depends upon, again, nasolabial, inferior base nasolabial flap can be used to some extent. Again, it will have a restriction with mobilizing towards the lateral surface. It will not go that laterally, actually. Middle of the flap, middle of the lip or body of the lip can easily be reconstructed. You have to do a bilateral, your nasolabial flap. Superficial temporal flap is nothing but the forehead flap, what you are making an incision on this without involving the deeper layer, deep temporal fascia or deep temporalis muscle. You can take only the skin, it's a fasciocutaneous flap, relying on your superficial temporal artery and your vein. That can be brought up to the preauricular area and bend minimally so that the kinking will not happen in this place. Because the scalp skin, as you all know, that has got the thickest layers that needs a lot of, you cannot rotate too much on this. So you have to extend up to your preauricular area and rotate, and that is one way of doing. These are all the two methods, that one is Karpaghian or submental flap for lower lip, or you can do a upper lip reconstruction using a superficial temporal nasolabial flap. Exact anatomy, no one can replace it.
Yeah, it's one of the tough, in fact, cosmetic reconstruction, especially not only the functional point of view, the lip is one of the difficult aspects, especially associated cosmetic reconstruction. That is very difficult.
Yeah. These kind of flaps is, see, cosmesis is out of question, sir. That is, we restore the basic function.
Can I go for the next question, please?
Yes.
What are the obviously the PG point of view there?
For both maxilla and mandible, based on the content you classify. One is the Brown's classification, extent of the defect. This is mandible is Boyd's classification, the HCL defect, hemimandible, central and lateral. Lateral defect may be incorporating with the condyle or without condyle. Hemimandible with or without condyle. Those kind of classification. And for both, you classify based on the requirement, whether you need, this is called OSM class, whether that is osseous, skin, muscle, and mucosa, like that. OSM classification is there. That needs to be addressed. This is based on the site, which site to be, specific site, condyle or ramus, or ramal part is not all reconstruct nowadays. They are because their ramal part is not required. Why? Reconstruction of the ramus is done by all the flap or not giving a shape for the mandible. We are anchoring, we are planning to give a dental rehabilitation. So the reconstruction plate that you are placing is taking care of your facial harmony. Then why do we need a flap? Facial harmony is taken care by in a benign lesions I'm talking, not about the malignancy, no chance. You have to think about flaps only, any of the flaps. But when it comes for a benign lesions, the reconstruction plate alone is giving your shape for the face. Medial to that only, we are going to place the flap or graft, whatever it is. And condylar portion, or that is taken care by your plate incorporated with the condyle, fused with the condyle. That is the one we are doing. From the mandible, dental component alone is reconstructed in the case of all the benign lesions. The ramal part is given by your plate, not by the flap. Condyle, no bone can restore the shape or function of the condyle at any cost. Fibula, whatever flap you take, even if you iliac crest incorporate with your anterior superior iliac spine, that will not restore the condylar function at all. So it is anchored with the supporting of the adjacent dominant mandible by the plate. Medial to that, we are keeping that. So site specific, when you come, you reconstruct from the angle to angle. One side of the angle to the angle. The most difficult part in the mandible is the anterior mandible. Anterior mandible is placement of implant is also difficult. Placement of the flap is also difficult. The shape of the mandible will be like that. And that's the principle for deciding that. I think we are going to discuss in the future slides. So anterior mandible, even though small size defect is there, we have to go for a flap. Irrespective of the size, we have to go for a flap, vascularized flap. Why? We have to get the shape of the anterior mandible by breaking the bone, by breaking the graft. When you break the graft, what will happen? The two component will have a different, that is devoid of blood supply. So that will go, that melts very spontaneously, that resorts very spontaneously. So anterior mandible is the most challenging part, and that flap is be ideal. Vascularized graft, vascularized flap is ideal for
anterior mandible. Usually the defect leads to more difficult as the tongue and lip and other deformities. Naturally, that will be one of the difficult portion. As you say about the ramal reconstruction, when you think about the plates, how often do you see any plate failure in the ramal region, sir?
Ramal region, the plate exposure or the failure is very, very rare, because we have abundant deep layers. We are going to bury that. Even the implants, what we are seeing, the patient precise implants, what we are making, which is not showing the anterior mandible, where the mucosa is exposed to that plate. When there is a mucosal connection, the exposure is very common. Whereas in the case of ramal region, we go from the extraorally to put the condyle in the fossa, and we do a layer closure. When there is a layer closure and the layers are all devoid of mucosa, the failure rate is very, very rare. So unless it is much superficial to that. So plate exposure with the mandible distal to the ramus is acceptable.
Quite
That,
uncommon.
yeah.
Okay. I think we have come to few more questions.
Yeah.
What they
Yeah, yeah.
commonly ask. When do you place a dental implant after microvascular reconstruction? When do you feel it is appropriate to do that?
The reconstruction of mandibular or maxillary defects resulting from the benign excision, you can put the implants immediately. Primary implant is advisable. If you don't manipulate too much of the mandible, the osteotomy is what you make to carve like a maxillary mandible should be minimized. If that is there, you can go for a primary placement of implant and do the anastomosis. The second challenge is if a flap goes for flaw, then the whole thing will, that is the second challenge. Whereas in the case of CA, once you finish that completely, the patient comes out of everything, radiation, chemo, everything is there. Then you take the patient for maybe after 6 months, you can take the patient for placement of the dental implants or secondary implants in benign lesions defect resulting from the benign lesion excision. 3 months is enough. Once 3 months it get consolidated, then you can put it like this. This remains the same even for distraction, the same concept. For here also same. So
That's good
placement,
as
one
well.
is primary placement of the implant. That is before doing the anastomosis, you put the implant and fix the mandible and then do the anastomosis. That one option. Or you do the flap, do the anastomosis, wait for 3 months, and then you can. The two options are there. Whereas in CA, you have to wait for 6 months. The patient has to undergo all radiation protocol after the third week or fourth week. Then you take the patient for check the vitality of by taking some kind of bone scan. Bone scan will be ideal to assess how much blood is going into the newly grafted mandible or maxilla. Maxilla will readily give a lot of blood supply, whereas in the case of mandible, augmented mandible, you have some kind of issue. That has to
Yeah.
be ruled out by taking bone scan. Then you take it for now. CBCT will not be enough.
Yeah, that's why many people will have a doubt whether the patient is undergoing for a RT after a malignant surgery. And we do dental implants, which goes for a osteoid necrosis, something like that. When any other complication, like what we see in your ORN. So how do you feel like that, sir? It doesn't
That's
happen after
what,
6 months.
yeah, very often it happens. That's what the radiation dosage should be minimized up to 50 gray. If it is exceeding even the normal mandible, vascularized mandible will go for a necrosis. A lot of chemotherapeutic agent can precipitate necrosis, osteonecrosis. Aminobisphosphonate can induce. Those kind of things decided by the 50 gray is the maximum. Emission of radiation absorbed by the less than 50 gray, the mandible will survive. Similarly, fibula also will survive. If it exceeding that too after doing the flap grafting or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, immediately taken for even that will go a spontaneous necrosis, osteonecrosis. That will come to know by seeing the exposure of the bone in the oral cavity. And take the bone scan and find out how much of bone is left. And based on that, we have to plan for one more surgery. That is the only option.
Okay. We have already discussed about between the bone graft and vascular stuff given in the later discussion itself. Again, a few of the questions they are asking. How do you decide?
Bone graft. Yeah, bone graft, small size defect. You should have a 2 ends to support. 2 endosteal vascularized ends are supporting. If it's less than 6 centimeters, you go for a bone graft. Hope I am clear. The distal and imagine you have lost this part of the mandible has lost. This part is vascularized intact. This is also intact, which is also vascularized. You can confidently put a bone graft, but still make sure if you're doing ameloblastoma, some kind of ameloblastoma, you excise along with the mucosa. In that place, you will not have adequate soft tissue closure. In that case, you will have a problem. So vascular flap will be helpful in that area, right? You put a flap or a bone graft, it has to get adequate skin closure, oral mucosal closure. OKC or ameloblastoma, if it is spilled over the soft tissue, will not have a, after doing the excision, you will land up with shortage of these mucosa to do a closure. In that case, don't choose your bone graft. You have to go for a vascularized free flap, and that you can this thing. This long span is there, more than 7 centimeter of defect, and if you want to make multiple cuts to carve, even though the small graft, don't think of that. You go for a flap. Long span, more manipulative, go for a flap, vascularized flap, distant flaps, preferably.
Okay. When you talk about the vascular flaps, which type of anastomosis is superior? Vein to vein or side to vein? Which type of
Vein
anastomosis?
end to side is better, sir. Vein end to side is better, preferably on the IJV for CA patient.
Can you little elaborate on that
See,
for that? Yeah.
yeah,
Why?
usually common facial vein is preferred. All three more than 3 mm, all the vessels obtained from the leg or cephalic vein from the thing or deep circumflex iliac vessel from the epigastric from the rectus abdominis. All flap will be within 3 mm. The vein is the first factor to be taken into account. So minimum of 3 mm diameter vein should be co-opted with the vein which is obtained from the donor side. Number one. Common facial vein will have three. Retromandibular vein will have that. The third option will be your IJV with end to side anastomosis. Always prefer a vein which has got a good suction power, which has to suck more amount of blood from the flap. That should be there. Artery, always go for facial or superior thyroid artery. In some cases, radiated cases, we need to think about external carotid artery, end to side anastomosis. But make sure the flap is covering the neck also, because we are taking that external carotid artery when there is no proper vessels in the recipient side. For that only, you are choosing the external carotid artery, and that means that is getting exposed already. The carotid sheath should have a clear, coverage for that. The flap should address that. The flap has to close the defect as well as the neck also, so that there will not be any carotid blowout. So go for a high powered suction capable vein, IJV or common facial vein. Common facial vein commonly do a end-to-end anastomosis, or else you can go for a end-to-side anastomosis. Easy, much preparation is not required. When you do a IJV seems to be big, but very easy to do anastomosis. Not much preparation. No need to strip too much of the adventitia. You can do a continuous running suture. Flow will be good. Suction will be good. Of course, artery will always be easy to do anastomosis. So end to side always for your vein, preferably. Or else if you do a dual venous, if you have time, do a dual venous anastomosis. Dual venous anastomosis. Two veins, always will have two vena commitants. Two veins can be connected somewhere else.
That
One,
will be
if it
more,
goes for,
it
yeah,
will
safe,
prevent
safe.
any stasis.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So what do you advise a post-operative guidelines or protocols for vascular reconstruction, microvascular reconstruction? What do you advise? Protocols, what is the recently Apollo's protocols?
If recovery is uneven, full, mobilize the patient earlier. Avoid your anticoagulants for the sake of preventing the DVT. And try to do irrigation in the intraoperative irrigation is enough. Vasodilator like what is that? Lignocaine or piperine, those kind of irrigation. Heparin for to remove all the coagulant which is getting connected to the site of anastomosis. That can be managed locally. Mobilize the patient earlier. Whatever the even if the patient has got a skin graft in the leg, you can mobilize the patient. So the orthostatic hypotension, there's a study which is showing orthostatic hypotension, constant stagnation of the patient. Patient is already under steroids, and he's not mobilized, and that causes hypotension. Yes, that causes flap insufficiency, ischemia. So better mobilize that helps the flap also, not only the patient but also the flap. That should be done. Choose the second, third is the antibiotic. Choose the right antibiotic. The basic baseline antibiotics. Always take 1 gram-negative antibiotic. Aminoglycosis, any one of the aminoglycosis. Start with some amoxicillin or taxane. If all these things, of course, you take all the. If you are giving amikacin or garamacin, no need to give a metronidazole. That is enough. That will cover the entire coverage. Start with that, then go for the higher antibiotics. Nothing is working out. So go for multi-drug, multi-antibiotics. Go for 5 days. Then you, if it is not working out, then go for. If you start initial antibiotic, you will be having restricted usage of the rest of the antibiotics. Gram-negative, any skin-involving procedure, go for a gram-negative one. Even iliac crest, you go for 1 gram-negative, like gentamicin, garamacin, whatever. Any aminoglycosis that you have to take. And intraorally, of course, you're going to give metronidazole. If metronidazole, if Gara-AMP is given, no need to think about that will cover the anaerobic also. And gram-positive, you're going to give any augmentin or amoxicillin or taxane kind of drugs. So that is the one. Stop steroids on the 3rd day. Steroid, that what we are giving, that is long lasting. So that should be stopped. That causes compression over the, compromises the vascularity. So that should be stopped third day. That is given not for your flap. That is to alleviate if the patient is under tracheostomy or your the tube is left in situ. Then you are giving this what is that steroids, long-lasting steroids. So that should be avoided. The 1 week, 10 days that is going every day 16 milligrams. That should be avoided. And fluids, IV fluids. There is a myth that diabetic patients should not be treated with ringer lactate. The trend is changing nowadays. That causes diabetic ketoacidosis. They are insisting, but it's good for your flap. Ringer lactate should be given for the patient because 1:1 ratio is enough. Whereas in the case of normal saline, you have to substitute more. So better to give a ringer lactate as long as the patient starts taking until the patient starts taking the rails feed. So these are all the things. And medicaments, try to reduce the medicaments always. Don't put a lot of, you make the area sterile and keep that area minimal.
Yes, sir. Having spoken about the oral finger lactate, how about the nutrients? What we can give for a
Protein-rich nutrient, blend, and the porridge kind of.
Do you advise the enteric feeding or do you advise the
enteric feeding? Until the oral wound heals, we have to go for rails tube feed only. We take 15 days time to. No, I won't remove the NG tube for 15 days. Advise either flap or graft. That food stagnation will definitely cause dehiscence, wound dehiscence, especially free graft. If you put intraorally, if you remove the tube on the 10th day, as we all do it for the other cases, definitely that will get exposed. So wait, nothing is going to happen if you retain the tube for more than 15 days or 20 days until the patient is going to be here. So that concern should be there for the surgeon to retain the tube as long as the wound is getting healed, not for the sake of the patient. That part we are all maintaining a restricted protocol. So NG tube should be there at least for 15 days, 2 weeks. The patient has to be there.
Through that NG tube, we will do enteric feeding, so that will definitely bring back the patient. That's the protocol we are advising, sir. Right. Any other question, Nana? Hello.
Yes, sir.
I think we have come to the almost last few questions of the session, sir. Thank you very much for your elaborate presentation on this reconstruction part of it. Ablative surgery, both malignant and benign lesions by Dr. Sanjay Murugan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Tina, Madam Jimson, Ramesh Babu, sir, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
For again helping me to share the
lessons that I learned. Very elaborative, sir. Thanks for the.
Sir, thank you, sir. Sindhu sir, this is Karthik here, sir.
Karthik.
Hello, sir. Sir, one last question, sir.
Please.